the other thing that's happened that you will, I'm sure, be really, really interested in is this. I'm Vancouver Island, so I'm not allowed to travel, right? So I can't get aboard a plane. So I can't speak in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario like I am in British Columbia, but I can go within the margins of my own car, right, on the highways of Vancouver Island. And so I've done a lot of public meetings, all of which have been sold out. No fee, but, they overloaded the building so that the fire regulations come into effect and all of that. But guess what's happened? And I think many Americans will be interested in that. It's the fundamental Christian churches that have embraced our cause. And I've come to learn, and these are ones that are not even part of the mainstream evangelicals. They're independent churches who are taking the Bible, and here's what our Christianity says according to us. And they have built churches up and down Vancouver Island, and they all may have different names and so on, but they all share one thing in common. And I was trying to figure out why this was. And I've spoken of all of the public meetings I've done, the majority have been in churches, okay? Because they've been willing to provide a space, whereas then nobody else in the community has been willing to provide a space. But here's what I've learned, not only from the pastors, but the people who are adherents. And of course, they allow other people into, anybody can come to the meeting. They don't have to be members of that church. Any public can come, and it's usually about 50-50, I'd say, of adherents and others who just were interested in what I had to say. But here's why. Most of these churches are learning in their Bible studies about the early Christian church. Now, I wasn't so much coggered on to this as when my wife and I, back in the early 2000s, went to Turkey. And we traveled to Cappadocia, right in the center of Anatolia.
I've been.
Okay, you've been. And there are communities that went underground, physically
underground, cities.
Okay.
Multiple layered cities.
When I mentioned this in one of the churches recently, the place went up. They were all familiar with it and couldn't believe that a person who was sort of, most people know me as well. I believe in the principles and morality of Christianity, and that we must have a code of conduct as a society in order to really function, in a sort of a peaceful, reasonable way. But they weren't aware that I was aware of the early church. And when I spoke about Cappadocia, you should see the people's faces light up because they had been learning about it. Unlike the mainstream Christian religions, who have not a clue about early Christianity and how they were prosecuted because of their point of view. And it was amazing.
That's absolutely fascinating. And I have also seen, it's really interesting. It does show up amongst Christians that there is a willingness to resist some of this nonsense.
Yes.
I've been a little disappointed that Jews who have effectively, taken a multiple millennium course in persecution have not rebelled in greater numbers against the tyranny that is unfolding across the West. But nonetheless, it is interesting that there are these communities that are not having any of it.
Absolutely. And I'm telling you, I was like right from the north, in Campbell River in the northern part of Vancouver, all the way down to the capital city, Victoria, which is on Vancouver Island.
Yep.
Vancouver is not the capital of British Columbia, it's Victoria. And every weekend, by the way, there are thousands of people who protest at the legislative building.
In Victoria.
An organization, opposed to what's going on. And 2 weekends ago, they had 13,000 people.
Wow.
At the legislature in Little Victoria. Victoria City itself is only about 100,000 people.
Yes.
The metropolitan area is about 300,000 people. But they had and are continuing to have. And I've spoken there. I spoke to one of the first rallies there. And so it's amazing to see that, right?
Even more amazing. I am well familiar with Victoria. I've been there multiple times. It was a destination for people who live in the Pacific Northwest on the American side. So I'm well aware of the place. I had no idea there were protests going on there. I mean, it's a hop, skip, and a jump from here. Regularly. And, thousands of people.
And thousands of people.
So how have they managed to keep that secret?
Well, because the press, again, won't carry it. It's not carried in the Times Colonist, which is the main newspaper there, right? I think one story out of all of the things, right? All of the broadcast media, the TV media, so you got to reply on the alternate media in order to get your message out. And so people in Saskatchewan wouldn't know.
And if you do pay attention to the so-called alternative media, then of course there's a great list of stigmas that are directed your way. So, this is another aspect of this that I wish people put more thought into, which is we have no idea actually how many people believe what and how many people can see the tyranny, because the intimidation and the control of our discussion has been so thoroughly effective.
No question. And even all the way down to polling now. You can't trust the polls. Well, you never could trust them all that much, but even less so now, in the sense that people are not going to answer the phone, or if they do, they're not going to give how they feel, because they're afraid that too will get somehow, right? Okay, there was this many in this region of BC who said this according to the poll. They don't want any chance of getting back to them because they're scared, like you said.
Yeah, no, it is the most bewildering circumstance, right? You can say the most obvious things and suddenly your life is turned upside down. Yeah. Protests of thousands of people can be happening.
Well, the Prime Minister called us racist, misogynists.
Right.
He said I think he said, we had to wonder if they're taking up some space that they shouldn't be taking up.
I recall him saying that
publicly.
Right. Yeah. Leaders in the West saying things that, if even 10 years ago, if you had had a preview of what was going to be said, you'd think a prime minister saying that, all hell would break loose.
The party would have him out the door. He would no longer be. I was leader of a political party in this country, in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. And I was a national figure for quite some time because of my involvement with the Constitution and other national matters, okay? And I know the system in Canada pretty well. And then I was a consultant for a number of years, right? And so I've traveled in every single jurisdiction in this country, okay? Every single one. I've done business in most. I've spoken most, okay? And so I know Canada pretty well, right? And so when you see now a political party and a country willing to have a leader and a prime minister who broke the law 5 times, by the way, that's documented 5 times. The Ethics and Conflict Commissioner of Canada has produced reports, investigated the situation, and he has broken the conflict of interest law 5 times in this country. And because the law has no accountability except for a $100 fine or $50 fine, he still remains leader of the political party, and he still remains Prime Minister of Canada. And so when you have a population that's willing to continue to support somebody who's broken our laws, whereas if you and I broke the law tomorrow, right, we would get significant fines or put in jail or whatever, whereas he can walk scot-free and still be the prime minister of this country. So there's something rotten in the state of Denmark, as our great bard would say, when that can happen.
Yeah, no question about it. Now, you raised the issue of his violations of the law. I don't want to miss the opportunity to ask you about violations of the Constitution that you helped write. I did a quick look through your Constitution. It does have a lot of familiar themes from the American Constitution. And I spotted several things right away. Even though I'm not a Canadian and I'm less familiar with what has unfolded there, it was still clear that there were several places where your Constitution guarantees rights that were nowhere in evidence. What do you see as the list of violations?
Well, the first one, you may not be aware, I have taken the federal government to court myself.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, and that was the other thing that I guess allowed me to be more of a national figure. Is that when I did all these speeches, one night I came home and got up the next morning and I said to my wife, I'm talking the talk, and I know what I'm talking about because I helped create this document, and I'm on very safe ground and very confident with what I am saying and these violations. But one of these days, somebody's going to say to me, even though I'm out there front and I'm risking and I'm doing all of this on my own tab, right? I'm going all these places, do all the things, and I won't take any money. I won't take any reimbursement for what I'm doing. I'm doing it as a Canadian. and as somebody who has to give back as well, and all the right reasons. But the other thing is, somebody could still say, why don't you walk the walk? So I contacted the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, which is an organization in Canada which just depends upon contributions from the public, and they help people go to court to challenge the government on constitutional grounds. That's what they're set up to do. So I contacted them, and we decided, with outside lawyers as well, that I would, with 4 or 5 other people, but I was the chief claimant, take the federal government to court over their travel mandates. Whereas I, as a Canadian, sitting on Vancouver Island, can't get aboard a plane in Nanaimo, British Columbia, and travel to anywhere. I can't travel within my own country or leave my country unless I'm vaccinated. And so I've challenged that Section 6 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which says I have the right to travel anywhere in Canada or leave Canada. So I'm actually, now my court case is registered, and there's now lawyers appointed by the federal government who argue their side. And so we're moving through the courts now, and my hearing is likely to be in August or September of this year. And so I might get ahead of a lot of the other cases that are in Canada challenging the Constitution, because most of the mandates in Canada are provincial and have to go through the provincial courts first, then to the Supreme Court of Canada. Mine is a federal mandate. I'm challenging a federal mandate, which brings me into the Federal Court of Canada, then the Supreme Court of Canada. So I only have 2 steps to go, whereas everybody else, most everybody else, has 3 or 4 steps to go. So I'm actually out there front and center, actually in the court.
Fighting tyranny.
My government, fighting the tyranny.
Wielding your constitution on behalf of your fellow citizens.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you a couple things about this. All right, you're on Vancouver Island, which is part of British Columbia. You cannot get on a plane because you're not vaccinated. That immediately causes you a problem on Vancouver Island.
Exactly. I'm on the western part of Canada, 5,000 miles away, is St. John's, Newfoundland, the province in which I was born.
Yeah.
Well, and not only can I go to Newfoundland, I can't get on Nanaimo and go to Kelowna or go to Vancouver or go to Victoria.
Right. Okay. So I know that there was a regular ferry to, I guess there was one to Vancouver, the city of Vancouver. Yeah. Can you get on that?
Yes.
Okay, so you can go by boat.
I can go by boat, but I got to be masked up. I can go by ferry because that's interprovincial.
Got it.
We're still in the same province.
Right, but you can't. Oh, so you can't leave British Columbia. You can go to Vancouver. You can go to the mainland.
But no, on the ferry side. But I can't even get on a plane and go to another part of British Columbia.
Oh, okay, got it.
Because aviation is federal under the Constitution.
Can you get to Toronto?
No, I can't get anywhere in Canada.
You can't. This is amazing.
Not by plane, no, or by train.
And
I'm not allowed to take the train either.
Let's suppose that the mandates collapse as attention turns to events in Ukraine and summer drives the pathogen.
They are falling now, but the federal one hasn't gone yet.
But let's suppose it did. What happens to your court case?
Stays because they broke the law for all of these days and months before they lifted it. The law doesn't go away by calendar. It goes away by if you violated it or not.
Right. Good. And then
we're in there to the end. Okay. And if I lose on the federal court, I'm taking it to the Supreme Court of Canada. I'm not stopping until I go to the highest court. And then if the highest court turns it down, then I'll have to propose a different kind of country than we got now.